For all things outdoors, listen to the father of two, the Jesus-loving TV show hosting hairy, true-blood American redneck, Ben Cole.
And listen to the outdoor filming, chef cooking, chocolate milk drinking, John Weismuller. And we are
Rooted Podcast. All right, Ben, we're getting into December here. Late season deer hunting. That'll be the topic today. Lots of stuff that goes into it. A lot of people think that since the rut's over, that their deer hunt needs to be over. And that's not the case always.
No, that's not the case always. And I also think that it depends on what region you're in, what location you're in, because where I grew up in Alabama, the rut has yet to start. And I'm sure there's certain regions in the state of Tennessee that, or Mississippi or Georgia, that the rut has either started and gone in progress or has also not started yet. So I think that is very regional, and we need to look at that too. But for the most part, where we are, we have already experienced the rut for most of the places that we have as far as land goes. So I think the most important thing for us now is to start finding food sources, because those big bucks have been chasing does, running like wildfire, and they need to replenish all the fat that they've lost during the rut.
Correct. So that's one big thing. Like, if we're going to dive into tips and tricks here for people, during this late season, this whole month of December, really, like, if you can find the food, whether that's you planted it right in a food plot or you can find some natural browse, like, if you can find the food, you will find the deer this time of year.
Yeah, and I think sometimes those deer, there's a lot of properties too that just simply don't have a food plot, right? So you have to look into how do I kill these deer without a food plot, without something that I can add. Well, there you just have to rely on God, because He's already given them everything they need, right? So at that point, you just have to rely on God and be like, okay, He's already provided them everything. So what do deer like? Well, they love acorns. A lot of acorns could be rotted by now. I don't know. They may not be. They may be just ready to rip. And heck, man, I've still got deer on camera eating acorns right now. And they've got a food plot right there too.
Yeah.
So I think what you need to do is figure out that place in between where pretty much is a transition zone, in between the bedding and the food. That's where you're going to find the deer in daylight, going back and forth from bed to food. You need to be able to locate that and hunt it. Sometimes in the mountains, that's going to be in a saddle, a finger ridge, different things like that is where you're going to find these deer during this late season.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, because, and let's just say, for example, that you don't have acorns, like there's native grasses, right? Deer eat briars. If you got a briar patch going through there, like there's going to be something, right, for that deer to browse. You just have got to find that. And then, man, just like you said, if you can find that bedroom, like if you know that they bed over here in this chunk of woods, and if it works out for you, if you can get in there, man, you talk about absolute money. Now, you got to be a little cautious when you're going into a place like that, especially this time of year, right? By this time, leaves are long gone; they're out of there. So a lot of your cover is pretty much gone. So you got to really, really pick and choose where you set up. Even if you have like a pop-up blind, if it doesn't look right, those deer will not like it. You've got to pick the right location that way, because you're getting so close to the deer, right? Because you kind of have to, whether it's food or trying to get in its bedroom. And if you're not covered up correctly, it can booger up a hunt pretty darn quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wind plays a huge factor in that too. But what you're saying about the ground blind and all that, and the tree coverage, it's not even a bad idea to brush in your ground blind to make it look like just a heap of brush. Even if it's just sticks with no leaves on it, that's fine. Just break up those hard edges so that way it doesn't look like, hey, I'm a place where somebody's sitting. And it's probably a good idea
Exactly.
to not have a white face just sitting there like, hey, what's up, dear? I mean, you're in a dark background, and then there you are, shining like the moon that's
Yeah.
landed on Earth. And I mean, yeah, they're gonna see that. I mean, it's like hiding from ducks. You got to cover
Yeah.
your face. If you don't cover your face, they're gonna see you.
Ain't
So one
happening.
thing that I started doing was using a wine cork. I just burn it a little bit, just rub it around, just mash it in there a little bit, get it in them pores real good, so that way I don't stand out
I'm
like a sore
huh.
thumb anymore. But you know, one thing that I've levitated towards is, or gravitated towards, is the hunting from a saddle, especially during this late
Yeah.
season. And I'm a big man, John. I'm 305 pounds. I'm 6'3",
Yeah.
305. And I love saddle hunting more than anything on this earth
Hmm.
because I'm very mobile. I don't have very many restrictions. I can get places that you can't necessarily put a tree stand, but I can get in there with that, and I can carry all of it in my backpack.
Right.
It's not like it's this big old
Yeah.
stand and 20 foot of sticks. It's 4 sticks and a little bitty platform, and I'm gone out of there. I can do whatever I want to from that point
Right.
on. And I've found that, especially if you want to get into those areas in late season where you are getting closer to the bedding area and you are trying to cut off that transition zone, that is one heck of a way to do it. And talking about brushing, you're literally hiding behind the tree. So if you figure out which way those deer are going by glassing it or whatever you want to do, using trail
Mm-hmm.
cameras, whatever, you figure out which way those deer are going and coming. If you can get it up where they're crossing in front of you and not necessarily coming behind you, that gives you one heck of an advantage because you can just pop back behind that tree and there you are. You're hidden without, essentially hidden in plain sight, because you don't have to have a ton of foliage to hide you at that point.
Right. No, that's a great point. I mean, saddle hunting's one of those kind of newer things in the industry, and it's becoming more and more popular every year, and probably for reasons just like that. I mean, especially this time of year where, I mean, you got to be mobile all year, playing the chess match, but this time of year when you're getting in a little tighter, and your kind of availability of trees kind of trims down a little bit because of the whole not having leaves and or certain branches or whatever to cover you, like that's a big deal to be able to hide. I mean, and if you can do it with ease, and someone can walk in on public and carry a few sticks and a little platform, that can change the game.
Yeah, it can get to those spots that nobody else wants to walk to carrying a big old lock
Right.
on and all the sticks that go with that lock on. It allows you to get
Yeah,
back
or even a
there.
climber.
Yeah, or even a climber for that matter. And dude, I'll be real honest with you. I feel safer in a saddle than I do in a climber. Hands down, 100%.
Yeah.
Will not get in a climber now that I have a saddle and the system to hunt with, because I'm not really good with heights and stuff. Like, that kind of stuff spooks me a little bit. But dude, let me tell you something. I feel so safe in that saddle. And to be honest with you, I use it to hang all of my other tree stands on the farms. I mean, that's just what I
Yeah.
use. I use it as a lineman's belt, tie in, set back, and I got both hands to work with. So it's not like the traditional, with just a strap over your shoulders. It actually, and I know some of those, you know, safety harnesses out there, they have the lineman's belt, but man, this is so comfortable. I can sit in that thing for
Hmm.
hours and hours and never think, man, I'm really getting tired of sitting here. It's really enjoyable, and I feel super safe
How
because I
about it?
know I'm not going where. I know I'm not going anywhere, because the
Right.
worst of the worst is I'm going to just swing from the tree. I'm just going to be sitting there, just going back and forth. So,
Right. Worst case.
um, yeah, worst case. But that's why I have gone to the saddle, is just because it's comfortable. I feel safe, and I can
Well,
get
yeah.
back to places that nobody else can, or not saying that they can't.
Right.
It's a lot easier to get back to those places when you don't have all the added weight.
Well, and being comfortable is really, really big all year, obviously, but really in this time of year because it gets so cold. Like, dude, if you don't dress right and you get uncomfy, I mean, your hunt can be over fast. But I mean, before it even really starts, like, I mean, dude, you've got to dress right and you've got to be comfy. Otherwise, I mean, it's just miserable out there.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, one thing to keep in mind when you're walking to your stand in the mornings or in the afternoons and it's cold, don't walk with all your layers on. Take several layers off when you start walking. You're going to be a little bit chilled in the beginning, but by the time you get to your tree stand, you're not saturated all your clothes in sweat. And that makes you be
Right.
able to hunt longer because you can throw on those layers as you're sitting in the stand instead of all of them being drenched with sweat, and then you freeze to death by the end of the hunt because
Yeah.
everything you have is wet and it's not doing what it's supposed to do, which is keep you warm.
Yeah. Keep you warm and dry. I mean, no, it's a really big deal. I mean, we can kind of jump into this for a second. What what makes a good cold weather attire, I guess is what I'm looking for. Like to
Well,
me, it's base layers. Like you got to start there.
yeah, you got to
And
start
I
with the
mean, if
base
you don't have
layers.
good base, it's over.
Yeah, you start with your base layers, of course. Wool is always excellent for that. There are other synthetics and things like that that you can wear, but especially that merino wool, man, that stuff is phenomenal at keeping you
It's
warm.
good.
Yeah, it is. So one thing I always do is I start with my base layers with my wool and included socks. So what I do with the socks is I put a pair of cotton socks on and I put a pair of wool socks on. So that way it wicks the moisture off my feet while keeping them warm at the same time. Um, I
Hmm.
start with that, the socks, the base layers, and then I move up to a mid layer, which is going to be a little bit thicker. But I still like to have my mobility. I don't want to look like the kid off of the Christmas Story that's just can't move.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
want to I want to still be able to move. But so I do the mid layer, right? So that may be a pair of insulated pants, and then like a vest or a long sleeve hoodie or whatever. And from there, I go to my outer layers, depending on the weather and the wind. So the wind is another thing that you really have to take into consideration here. The wind will kill
Mhm.
you faster on being cold than anything else will. It's going to cut your hunt short every single time if you don't have some sort of clothing that blocks the wind. If you can feel the wind on your body, like through your clothes, you're going to be cold. There's no two ways around it. You're going to be cold every single time when you have that wind cutting through your clothes. If you have the wind stopper or whatever, just something that stops the wind, whether it's
Mhm.
waterproof or whatever, that is a huge game changer in being able to stay in the field longer and be more successful. It's all about stopping that wind, and obviously temperature really affects that too. So if you have wind plus a super cold temp, that's when you really need to
Mhm.
focus in on how many layers you need, what specific layers you need. Like if you're in sub zero and you have a 20-mile-an-hour wind, well, that's going to hurt. Well, you're going to need to think about
Yeah.
gloves, a face cover. You're going to need to think about all those kind of things because you don't want frostbite and you don't want hypothermia. You don't want either of those. You want to be able to enjoy your hunt and be warm.
Yeah, exactly. And even if it's not that extreme of a case, and it's just a regular, you know, 22-degree cold, 8-mile-an-hour wind day, right? Which is great for deer movement. In theory, if everything else is right, you want to be out there. So I totally agree with you. I'm always like a man. If you're gonna spend the money on any hunting piece of clothing, spend it on the base layer, and then I may spend it on like a nice jacket. But man, if your base sucks, I don't care what else you got. It's not gonna matter because you know the bottom line is like the base is gonna keep that initial heat off your body there and nice and warm. And if that's cold, it's over, man. Like it's over. So anyway, I always do base layer, and then I may do like a little shirt, vest, maybe a hoodie, kind of like you. I get some insulated pants, and then I always have a nice insulated jacket, usually a size up from what I normally am. That way it can fit over all that stuff. And then I tell you, man, for me, when it gets real cold, I got a nice pair of insulated bibs. That really changed the game for me because it's something you can roll up, put on your backpack, and then slip on whenever you get to your stand. Like that's a really versatile piece of equipment for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And like you're saying, the base layer is crucial. If you combine the base layer and what I was saying with the wind stopper, then
Yeah, you're good.
golden. You're golden. If you can stop the wind and keep your body heat close to your body, you win. Period.
Yeah,
you just got to take care of your hands and feet. Because I don't know if you're like me, but when my feet get cold, I'm done. My hands can be cold all I want to. But if my feet get cold, I'm done. I'm going back to the lodge. I'm going back to the house, and I'm going to sit there and whine about why my feet are cold.
Exactly. Hey, you know, man, there are two things that ruin a hunt: being cold and being hungry. And it's like, if you can mitigate both of those, odds are you are going to be there longer. And then obviously
that's why
odds of getting a deer.
That's why we pack Little Debbie's.
That's right.
Yeah,
hey,
we always got shape, or form.
And, always try to dress nice and warm and wear good boots and good gloves. And I'm a big beanie guy, so I love having that. That keeps my poor little head warm, But
little head. Me and you have daggum watermelon heads. Both of us do. It's hard to find a ball cap fit us.
It's terrible, man.
It is. It's absolutely terrible.
It's real bad out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell people I got a reverse Stewie. I got the raw end of that deal. It's bad.
Oh, man.
It's real bad.
So to circle back to where we started on finding food and ways to hunt deer in the late season in the food plots. So in your opinion, what food plots are favored more in our region and why is that?
Mm-hmm. So definitely green. And what do I mean by that? Like I would say this time of year, green over grain. So I would prefer to hunt like a crimson clover food plot over maybe, like a corn. Not that corn's bad. I mean, corn always works, right? Planted corn has worked for 100 years. It'll work for 100 more. But I love green fields because they're really, really high in all these nutrients and things that the deer needs. Like you were saying, that deer just had a big, long rut, and now it's trying to build back up because it knows the cold's coming or it's here, and I need to hurry. So if you can find a nice clover plot, maybe something with some winter wheat, maybe like a Daikon radish that works really well here in our part of Tennessee. So if you can find the green, I'm telling you, those deer will be there just because they really have no choice. They got to be.
That's true. So one thing I do, you said you like the green. I go in and I'll give you two scenarios on what I do actually. So the first option that I do is I plant corn in the spring. I go in and I bush hog it, right? Well, after I bush hog it and it comes September, October, I go in and I drill wheat in behind that, in that cut stuff. So now we have green and the yellow all together in one beautiful spot because the carbs keep them warm and the other produces fat. That's what we're looking for, is to rebuild those fat deposits back up in their bodies so they can handle the rest of the winter where we are, because it does get cold here. We do get snow. It's not like out west or the Midwest, but we still have harsh winters, and it can still kill those bucks that are
Mhm.
not ready for that, or old does, or whatever. But now another scenario of what I do is I'll have a cornfield, and then on the other side of it is all like the daikon radish, the turnips, the clover,
Mhm.
all that. So you have the cornfield right here, and then there's a road that I can drive my side by side through, and then that's where the auxiliary food is. And I do that so that way they can have more area to browse, because deer are browsers. Remember, they don't just eat one thing,
Uh-huh.
they move, they bounce around. So if you have a multitude of food in one spot, that gives you more time for the deer to be in there. You can analyze what deer are there and figure out, okay, is this the buck I want to shoot? Or is this the doe I want to shoot? Or hey, that deer makes me really happy. Pow! But it gives you a better opportunity to also have more ethical shots at the end of the day. That's what we're there for, is to make ethical, clean shots on the critters that God has given us and take them home and eat them. And let's face it, we're in the mountains, John. If we shoot a deer and it runs
Mhm.
off in a holler, that is a nightmare to recover. So we want to make the quickest,
It's bad.
most ethical shot possible so they die sooner, instead of running off into the holler and them having to suffer, yada, yada, yada. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We don't want the deer to suffer, first of all, and we want to make the recovery as easy as possible for our sakes.
Yeah, listen, if I can have a minimal to no tracking job, I'm all in on that.
I love dropping them in their tracks. Love
Oh,
it.
dude, listen, I should probably, you know, exercise more and be more in shape and, be ready for that moment when it goes in the holler. But I'm not. I like little Debbie's in my tree stand. Sorry about it. Sue me. I like
Yeah,
dropping deer in their tracks. That's what I like to do. It's
yeah.
awesome.
Because one of these days, me and you're going to probably find ourselves off in a holler at Sinking Creek Ranch, trying to figure out how to drag a deer up from the bottom to the top, and that's going to be
Yep.
rather slippery when we get to that point. But you know, that's some big old hills over there on that ranch. I mean, some big ones.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, and
Yeah.
listen, they will
So
humble you fast.
yeah, show you how bad out of shape you are real quick. So back to the food
Yeah, buddy.
plots. So, in your opinion, what size food plot makes sense for this time of year? And I mean, even if you can't afford a tractor or anything like that, what do you suggest somebody
Mhm.
do to help this time of year?
So this time of year, what I see that helps a lot is something called kill plots. So that's like a really, really small food plot. Like I'm talking quarter acre, like, and you can even do an eighth of an acre. Like this, you know, I'll say this. It doesn't need to be much. The thing you have to consider is how many deer are in your area. Because, like Ben said, they browse. Okay. So essentially, you got to figure out um, how big does it need to be for how much browse is going to be there. Like, if you have 20 deer coming in that field every night, and you may want to try and make it as big as you can because 20 deer can wipe out a field of food in no time. So I would say find something as big as you can get it. But in all reality, man, it really just needs to be like a quarter acre little food plot for this time of year. Just because, I mean, in all reality, all you're looking for is that deer to come in there whenever maybe the barometric pressure's up, right? The feeding frenzy's on, it's cold, they don't have a lot of fat, they're trying to store back up, and you just need to catch him in that moment feeding. And I mean, it's all you really need. So I would say like quarter acre or less. What about you?
Well, I think that it doesn't necessarily matter the size of the food plot. I think what matters is deer density and browse pressure, like you've already mentioned. So when you look at that, and let's
Mhm.
say you're in South Alabama or South Georgia, where there's 50 deer that come out on a food plot in one time. Okay, you really need to say, okay, we have a whole lot of browse pressure here. We need to plant things that can withstand that, such as a clover or something of that nature that can withstand that high browse
Mhm.
pressure. So that way they don't just move in one day, eat it all, and they're gone. Right. So when they come into a
Right.
clover plot and they eat, well, it comes back. You can mow a clover plot and it comes right back. So they can eat it all they want
Yep.
to. And then, just like the issue we ran into at the ranch 2 years ago when we tried to plant some soybeans. We tried to plant them on the 15-inch rows. Well, guess what? That didn't work because we had so much browse pressure. Even seeds specifically designed for browse pressure could not handle it at 15-inch rows. So that's why we had to transition to the 7.5-inch rows, which we've already talked about in another episode. So I'm not going to dive off deep into that, but it's being able to adapt to what your herd needs and to provide
Yep.
the amount of food that your herd needs to sustain them throughout this winter and throughout the hunting season. Now, one thing I'll tell you I do as soon as hunting season goes out, my feeders go back out. Because technically in the state of Tennessee, you're not allowed to have food during hunting season, and that's fine. I get it, whatever. So, literally the day that the youth hunt is over, at the end in the second week of January, my feeders go back out. My mineral stations are rebaited, and we have plenty of food to go through the end of January, March,
In
April,
February.
and February too. So that's what I'm trying to do
Yep.
is even when my food plots run out, we still have food there to help them get through the winter. Because that's my end goal is to have enough deer that are really healthy that can grow to their max potential, not just be like, oh, well, there's a cool
Mhm.
8 point. It's like, well, I want to see what that 8 point will do in 2 years or have enough food for those mamas to produce the right kind of milk. And don't forget, those does are already bred right now. So guess what's growing? Your future stock of bucks, your 5-year plan. That's what's growing right now. So you have to have that really solid food
Mhm.
to be able to, for those does to grow those fawns like they need to in the womb.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal. I mean, that's a great point. Um, kind of on the same note there, like scouting is huge this time of year. Even
Mm-hmm.
like I know it's still deer season, but if you can scout for next year's hunt now and you can kind of watch how these deer transition, kind of, like if you notice that maybe the deer were over here and now they're kind of coming back and they're over here in the late season, if you make some mental notes, next year you can catch them coming over this way and then back, for the late season, you can watch how just what deer like to eat on your farm, all of those things that you can watch for this time of year that'll just help you moving forward going into next season and a year from today, like all of that stuff, all of that scouting uh definitely helps. And if you happen to be scouting with a bow or gun and you happen to get one, bonus. But I would uh definitely give scouting while hunting. I would definitely do that especially during this late season.
Well, and one thing to add to that is if you're out there in the late season trying to fill your last buck tag and you're looking and walking, I would suggest go on foot. Don't just drive the side by side around. Park it and genuinely walk and look and observe and figure out, okay, these scrapes are here now. They weren't here 2 weeks ago. This rub is fresh. This rub is fresh. Where do they go?
Mhm.
Walk to the edge and just look. Don't touch them. Don't do that kind of stuff, but just look and say, okay, so these rubs are going off the ridge this way, right? And the next set are running
Mhm.
along the ridge, going right down it, not going off each side. So that's one thing I did in Linden at the Sinking Creek Ranch is I found a set of scrapes and rubs, right, that correlated. So it's an old logging road that goes down on part of the saddle, right? And that turned into the way that the deer travel across that saddle all season long. But the bucks transition there during the rut. Every year from November 15th to December 30th, that is the way those bucks travel. That is one of their travel corridors. Now, I'm not saying they all do that, but there are 3 or 4 key bucks that make that same path every single year. And they travel that same path. There's always a rub and there's always a scrape in that exact spot.
And that's what you got to look out for, right? All those signs. I mean, the deer are going to tell you what they're doing. You just got to look out for it, watch it, study it, and make a few mistakes and keep moving forward, right?
Well, with that note, folks, we are going to take us a little break.
At the end of the episode?
No, I was taking a break for the sponsor, remember? So that way we can add the end of the episode after this. I think we should probably try to take a break sooner in the episode, maybe halfway through. But
we can just cut it too. I mean, whenever there's just a natural kind of change in topic or something.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, let's just end the episode then. All right, guys. Thank you so much for... All right, I'm going to start over. All right, editing start here. Well, folks, that is all for us on this episode. I hope you learned something. As always, the Redneck is signing off.
See y'all later. Good luck on your late season hunt.